Kimberly Rice, and you are tuned into the Secret Sauce Marketing Tasting Show, the groundbreaking podcast for business bosses, professional women, and anyone who is hungry to learn how to create the career, business, and life of their dreams by charting their own course. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kimberly Rice of KLA Marketing Associates, bringing to you a new episode of our Secret Sauce Marketing Tastings. I could not be more excited to welcome my friend and colleague, Catherine MacDonagh of Legal Lean Sigma Institute and many other areas today. And she and I are going to have a very lively conversation on we're going to cover a lot of ground, and I'm delighted that you've decided to join us. So Catherine, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me to your special sauce recipe concoction.
So I want you to share with our listeners, if you would, a bit about yourself, your professional passion, and a few insights into your professional journey so our readers can get a better sense of you.
Sure. As I like to call it, my sort of ancient history is I originally planned to be a theater major and take the stage by storm as an actress. And I lived up to some aspects of that aspiration, but I wound up taking a detour and wound up going to law school and practicing law as a corporate counsel for several years. Then I had an opportunity to be an outside salesperson, and it was during that experience that I met what were the very first law firm marketing professionals that existed in the profession. And I decided, okay, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And after that, I became interested in how do I create services that address the needs that I'm finding in the industry. So I kind of still use all of the things that I have learned, all my seemingly random experiences, including being a concert promoter, a college DJ, and a manager of a hardcore punk band during my college years. And now I take the stage by storm as a consultant, speaking about strategy, business development and marketing, and of course, process improvement and project management, all of which I'm extremely passionate about.
That's quite the plate that you have to fill there.
Many plates, all spinning simultaneously.
So I'm just curious, what was it about process improvement and the legal marketing, legal services sector that attracted you?
Oh, I love this question. One of the reasons it attracted me is because having been a client, a practicing lawyer who was also a client, who had clients that I served, I became very interested in things that would help me and people like me work better together. How could we deliver more value to our clients, to our organizations, without there being any trade-offs? So it was perplexing to me initially that the longer our law firms took to do something, the more money we paid them. That was just mystifying to me and seems like the wrong way to incentivize people to be efficient. But it also teed up this weird dynamic where I just didn't really feel like we were truly on the same team. So I started to become fascinated with the things that I began reading about. And this was back in the days where DuPont was starting to create their legal model and engage in consolidation. And I thought, I'm really keen to learn more about this. But it wasn't until I became involved with my third law firm as a marketing and business development director that I got a chance to earn my Six Sigma green belt. And I love to tell people the story of how really a lot of the other people in the course were male engineers who were kind of looking at how to create consistency in the manufacturing of a product. And they kind of, at the beginning of the course, said, well, we don't get how this applies to legal services. And I said, well, I'm not sure yet either, but there's something there. And I kept learning and I kept learning. And at the end of the course, they agreed. They said that, no, you're onto something. And so I basically took about a year before I could start trying some of these things because they're not so easily translatable. And I kept saying to a friend, why isn't anybody teaching this in a context that is relevant to those of us who work in the law, whether we're a legal or a business professional? And I guess I must have said it often enough that she kind of one day said, you do it. You see it. If you believe in it so much, go and do it. And so I've always appreciated that and try and do that same kind of thing for other entrepreneurs, because you just need, that one person sometimes to believe in you, even if you don't quite see it yourself. And that began my kind of putting our courses together and then starting this, the Legal Lean Sigma certification courses, which of course were initially introduced under the umbrella of the Legal Sales and Service Organization, of which I'm a co-founder. And LASSO is wonderful. We have an annual rain dance conference, which is typically in June in Chicago every year. And we have are known for having the very first surveys that looked at women lawyers and the keys to rainmaking success for them. So I'm obviously a woman lawyer. I'm very interested in how do we help women lawyers because we need to keep them in the profession. So what we hadn't anticipated is how much consulting work was going to come out of these courses. And so my two partners in LASSO were so generous and allowed me to spin off the Legal Lean Sigma Institute. And we've been rocking and rolling with this stuff since 2003. And at this point have trained literally thousands of legal and business professionals all over the world. We've delivered dozens of process improvement projects. We actually own the registered trademark in Legal Lean Sigma. We've created our own methodology for which we and our clients, more important, have won amazing awards. And, we just keep innovating. And that's part of the attraction for me, is getting a cross-functional, truly diverse team of people together, getting these tried and true frameworks and tools, and creating something that's really just groundbreaking. It's very fun.
Oh, that sounds, and I've seen your work, I've heard of your work, in the industry, and you have a absolutely unparalleled reputation.
Thank you.
Absolutely, for the work that you've done. But share with our listeners a little bit more. What does it mean to have a legal lean Sigma certification as a practical matter?
So what it means as a practical matter is that if you're a white belt or a yellow belt, it means that you've survived sitting for a day or two, respectively, in one of our certification courses. which are all designed to introduce people to the key process improvement methodologies, but more important, to give them the kind of experiential learning environment where we're introducing a concept, showing people a tool, for example, process mapping, and then people work in table teams to apply the concept in the tool to a process that's of interest to them. So it could be a legal process like single plaintiff litigation or filing a trademark application, or a business process like onboarding or timekeeping or responding to RFPs are pretty popular. So at the end of a day or two, they will have either dipped their toe in the water or kind of gone in above their knees. And that conveys kind of the level of dangerousness that we've created. But for sure, they will never, ever look at the world the same way again. For people that want to get a green belt, that requires the successful completion of a project. So people that have received a green belt certification have actually completed and delivered a process improvement project using either a very robust or a very accelerated way of working. And then finally, people who are black belts, as a practical matter, black belts are people like me that want to do this for a living and just love it and can eat, sleep, and breathe improvement work. As I think I might have mentioned, it is really fun. It's very challenging work. Even though we're applying the same kind of thinking and the same kind of framework, no project is ever the same. None of our clients employs the different tools or methodologies, of which there are literally hundreds, the same way as everybody else. So it's kind of the perfect combination of art and science.
Wow. So who is a typical, or is there a typical Sigma, legal lean Sigma candidate? I mean, is it lawyers? Is it legal marketers? Is it managing partners? Who benefits most, if not everyone?
I would say all of them, all of the above. And what we love kind of like in extra amounts is when our law department clients engage in this work with their outside counsel, and when our law department or other service providers engage in this with their clients, because the power of doing this work comes from putting together that cross-functional, diverse team of people, and diverse in the sense of kind of the classic diversity and inclusion sense, but also people who think differently and communicate differently and have different backgrounds and skill sets, and who represent at least the primary stakeholders in a process.
Sure.
And so the insights that each brings to the table are literally transformational for the other people who are working with them. So it's that power of the team that makes it so effective, in my opinion. So it's anybody that's interested in working better, and not just we kind of poke a little fun at the idea that efficiency is about doing more with less. That could be one right answer, but it's not the only way to be efficient. It could be about doing more with more or less with less. So in our world, it's figuring out for what we do to create the work product and deliver it, the service piece, the customer experience, the client experience piece. What are the right things to do? And then how do we figure out ways to then do those things right the first time, every single time? And for that, you need the power of the team.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it sounds very powerful, and a very comprehensive approach to work. And I can understand why, and I'm sure others do as well, which makes it so compelling of, how, I guess, foundational it can be and transformative into an organization, particularly when you look at the team approach.
That's spot on, because many times at the end of an engagement, and this is an answer to what makes your heart sing type of a thing, people will say, this has been the best experience that I've ever had across my career. And for some people that, will span decades. And that's closely matched with, we have never worked better together. And that can be accomplished. I got that comment just last week. We worked with a firm that brought in clients to sit around, sit around a table and work together for the full day in a white belt program. We pre-selected all the processes that they were going to be working on. And by the lunch break, people were coming up and saying, this has completely changed our relationship. It's deepened our respect for one another. And already I can say, we've never worked better together. We've been wanting to have these conversations but couldn't really figure out how to structure them. And so I love that. That's what makes my heart sing. It makes my heart sing when students from George Washington University and Suffolk Law School, where I'm an adjunct professor, when those students think of me as they employ some of these things, and they come back and they say, wow, I used this tool today. Listen to what happened. Or I just finished a big project, or I just got a job, or I just got a promotion. And the fact that I was able to talk about this, I had a vocabulary, I had some experience with this, was a competitive advantage. I love all of that.
Well, it really, from what I understand and hear from you, it doesn't really get any better than that, because it seems that we are the type of folks who we really want to uplift, inspire, and empower others through our expertise and our passion for our professional journeys. And when you have people to give you that kind of feedback and to know that you've had that impact, to me, that is, it doesn't get any better than that.
I completely agree, and I love the way that you put it. I was recently introduced as the mother of legal process improvement, and I kind of I was a little surprised by the introduction, but having had 2 years of improv experience, it didn't really throw me. But I love the kind of idea of, giving birth to all of this stuff, but not the toddler nor the adolescent years per se. I thought, wouldn't it be better to be known as sort of like the Oprah of process improvement? So I could say, you get an improvement, and you get an improvement, and you get an improvement. But either way, I just love the idea that people feel like I gave them something that is useful. And, some people do require a little more nurturing than others, but the idea that people will see things and experience things differently than they ever would have is very motivating for me.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that you've reached that point. And we all know that to have gotten to that point, there's a whole lot of seed sowing and cultivation and fostering and nurturing that come well before those types of harvest of your labor.
Mm-hmm. I think that's true. And I think to get to that point, it's really like I teach people, but it also my work with another business that I have, which is called Firm Guidance, where I focus more on the strategy and business development work. This is, we're not going to get there by leaps and bounds. This is day in, day out, brick by brick, putting it together. And so the fact for me is that there are things that I can kind of pull off of the shelf, if you will, but literally each and every engagement that I undertake is uniquely tailored for that client.
Sure.
Because always what I'm, trying to do is to build in multiple benefits to one thing.
Right.
Always.
Right.
And I'm also very driven by the idea of helping people and organizations create competitive advantages. So to be able to kind of find the right way for them to tap into what those things are for them is part of creating high quality work product. But nobody wants to work with you if it's painful. So to try and find ways to make things fun, or at least as comfortable as we can while we're doing this transformation work, I think that requires kind of that combination of diplomacy and tact on the one hand, and speaking truth to higher power on the other hand. And I think that kind of wisdom is only acquired with deep experience, and you can't get there overnight.
No, not at all. Well, that you know of which you speak, because to have gotten to where you are, where I am, that would not have been possible, a decade or even 2 decades ago, because we're always learning and, as you said, innovating as the market changes, as our clients' needs change and their marketplace changes. And so it's a beautiful thing. I think it's a beautiful thing when it all the all the nurturing, all the fostering, all the innovating just kind of converges, and it's like, oh, this is what I've been doing all these decades and years, and so this is why I've been doing this, and it all comes together. That
exactly.
Very gratifying.
Exactly.
I'd like to
it is, and I've learned so much, and I'm very indebted to clients, not just because they've given me the opportunity by hiring me, so not just the opportunity to do work for them, but to work with them, and to basically become to build a learning organization of my own, and that's what makes it easier to do things like transformation work and change management and have empathy and that sort of thing. But I'm extraordinarily grateful to them. Many of them have taken risks, some maybe smaller than others, some quite large, but they have all entrusted me with this very important work. And so, I'll always be grateful to them. And I think it's just part of that personal and professional evolution. I'm certainly, touched by every single person that I get to work with. So then I pour that back in and send it back out. And
Right.
that's the stuff of sustainability, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is. It's just there's no way about taking. It's constantly giving, receiving, and then repaying that, paying that forward. So I want to speak for a moment, Catherine, as women business owners. It's interesting our place in the world as a woman business owner, and how that impacts our ability to build, grow, and sustain a prosperous business. And I would love for you to provide to our listeners, particularly the women entrepreneurs that we that we have tune in episode to episode of, what are a couple of steps that you've taken regularly that has helped you advance your growth in your business?
This is such a good question. I think a couple of things that I've done are, first of all, I've asked people for help, which sounds so simple, but for those of us who are, completely consumed by building this business and working on the business, and it's long days and long nights and jumping on airplanes and living out of suitcases and all that, asking people for help and learning the strength of vulnerability, I think, is a very good lesson. I wish I had learned it just a little bit earlier. And I'm a little less of a lean in kind of a person. I'm using air quotes that people can't see, but I'm definitely a lean on person. And what I have found is that the more specific I can make my request, the easier it is for somebody to say, no brainer, I'm all in, I'm happy to help you. And I think most people are really, eager. It goes back to what you said. How can I contribute what I have to offer? So that's one thing. I think it's, the lean on. It's time for lean on. The other thing is that I will always recommend to women business owners is know your data and be comfortable talking in actual, facts and figures. Get it together.
Right.
And be comfortable referring to those data points. And what we've seen in Lasso's women lawyer surveys is women are just natural relationship builders. Right. We just are. And so what we're less good at, and our surveys show this as well, is taking our personal relationships and becoming comfortable having a business conversation. And so there's like this mental switch that I feel like will be helpful for all women to do, that it's thinking more along the lines of, well, what kind of a friend are you if you have failed to at least offer to be helpful in a way that is easiest for you, what's most natural for you, or you have your greatest strengths. So instead of being uncomfortable having a business conversation, just look at it that way. So those are the things that I have found, really have been helpful to me. There are others, but you asked for just a couple. So lieu of writing an entire book, those are kind of my top things that come to mind.
They're very powerful, very, very powerful, because as women, I've done quite a bit of research on this. As women, we're so socialized not to own our accomplishments. And I'm sure you and I have seen it time after time within organizations that we've worked with and for, that, owning our accomplishments and taking credit. So many times women say, oh, I don't want to boast, I don't feel comfortable bragging, which of course it's not. It's stating fact, which is what men do all day, every day.
Exactly.
And so it's, it's the mindset. This is the things that I teach. It's the mindset with which we look at and perceive some of our greatest strengths that tend to get marginalized because we don't allow ourselves to own our own brilliance, essentially.
I think that's so beautifully stated. And I guess, too, the corollary to that is to also let go of the stuff that you just don't really enjoy.
Right.
I mean, for me, the best example is bookkeeping. First of all, I dislike it. And I'm also really not good at it. And I will tell you, I work with another small business owner, woman small business owner, and Dawn handles all the bookkeeping. And guess what? She loves it, and she's really good at it. So we don't need to keep picking things up in our life. We can put some things down so we're not overburdened. Create space for some other people. This is part of that lean on thing. And then that sort of gives you the capacity and the freedom, not only to do the things that you enjoy, but you actually are delivering better value to your own business and your clients that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's in some of my study and learnings, I forget the name of it, but it's a box of, it's a competency box of what we enjoy and what we're competent at, what we enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
we have this unique brilliance in, what we don't like and we're not so great in, and what we really stink in. And so we need to focus in that northeast, that second block is what we enjoy, unique brilliance. And sometimes it takes a lifetime to figure out what that is, but the more that we devote ourselves to figuring that out. And sometimes I know for me, when I was in college, it was really the process of elimination that decided my career. Is I knew I could not be a history major, or I was going to flunk out if I was going to be a business major for most of the reasons that you just said, that numbers are not my group. And I'm the words and the thoughts and the language and all that. And so the sooner we can identify what that unique brilliance is, then work doesn't all of a sudden need to look like work anymore. It's really serving our purpose and passion.
Oh, I love that. Right on, sister.
I mean, it sounds very simplistic, but you and I both have plenty of people on our networks, I'm sure, that have not nailed that. That they're
No,
the things that they
no.
don't really doing.
You're right. And we say this about when we're teaching process improvement and project management. None of it is terribly complicated. So yes, it's simplistic. It's just that none of it is easy.
Right.
And nobody applies these things the same way as anybody else.
Right.
So
yeah, no, that's very inspiring and uplifting. So I want to be mindful of our time, and I have just two more questions. And this is a question that I ask all of our guests and our friends, and that is, I love this question. If you could give yourself, your younger self, one piece of professional advice, what would that be?
Listen to your mother. No, I always listen to my mother, who's a very wise woman and one of my own personal heroes and on my own personal board of directors. I guess I would say believe in yourself sooner.
Yeah.
Just because nobody else sees what you see, it goes back to what you identified as your unique gifts. Just because nobody else sees it doesn't make it not the right thing. And over the years, I've taken a lot of different personality, assessments. I'm actually qualified to administer the Myers-Briggs, so I like that one, but I like them all. But I took a really interesting one when I was serving on a board, and it kind of classified people into kind of their own unique strengths. And it turned out that I was the only one on the board who filled the role of what this instrument was calling treasure hunter. And so I have discovered that one of the things that I'm really good at is exactly that, identifying where there is treasure and then bringing it back to the organization. But we're small in number. And so it can be very, very challenging. And sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I've built this thing, I've put it out there. When is everybody going to catch up to where I am? So.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a big one. That's a really big one because, sometimes we are a team of one, and we have to really dig deep into our sense of confidence and our belief in ourselves, that even when we stand alone, we know we're on the right track.
Exactly.
And that's really,
Listen to that voice.
I really think that that's where the metal kicks in, of the the personal development, the personal work, and building that self-esteem / self-worth, self-confidence muscle to say, okay, I may be the only one that feels this way or sees it this way, but that doesn't mean that it's not the right way or the better way or the most productive way because I'm standing alone. And so that really requires a lot of character and and that self-confidence, which is a whole nother conversation, but there's nothing like it if you can grab a hold of it.
I agree. And this kind of goes back a little bit to your comment about women business owners. What I find so special, and you exhibit this for sure, is that to be a successful woman in business requires not just vision and not just strategy, but also the execution. You have to be really good at all three of those things. And so those require different mindsets and, going through those different phases. And not everybody has all three of those things. Most people are lucky if they have two.
Right. Well, one of the things that I have come to know, and I was in business for 23 years before I became a business owner. And so I don't know that there's any real training to help set a positive path to become a prosperous business owner. I know that an MBA is not the secret to it. There's lots of different pieces to it, but what I've learned after having been a business owner for now 11 years is, recognize what your strengths are, kind of what we were talking about. Recognize what your strengths are and where you have some of the, I hate to use the word weaknesses, but where you don't have the strengths, identify people who do have the strengths and surround yourself with the best team possible. Because I don't want to do the bookkeeping. I'm not good at it. I don't enjoy it. There's a lot of things that I don't necessarily enjoy. And so over time, I've accumulated disciplined experts who do fill those gaps that allow me to do what I do best.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. So I think it's useful to diagnose weaknesses, and then you got to sort of shut down that critical voice, whether it's internal or external, that's telling you can't do something. It's, if you think you can, then you can. Absolutely. And you should.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this is fascinating stuff, Catherine. So I want to give our listeners of the best way to connect with you following our discussion today. They may have something that they'd like to ask you, or they'd like to maybe register for your next Sigma 6 Lean Sigma program. Or anything else. And so I always like to have our guests be available to our listeners. And so would you please share with us what that best way of connection may be?
Sure. I'd be delighted to hear from people and answer any questions. And then I'd also like to report back to you if people have contacted me as a result of this really fun discussion. So our website is legalleansigma.com. And it can be emailed at Catherine, CATHERINE, @legalleansigma.com.
Wonderful. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been very uplifting and inspiring to me, and I know for our listeners. And it's always great to connect with another sister in business. And we wish you all the best as you move forward and juggling all those plates so professionally and expertly as you always do.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the chance to join you, and thank you for all your great work in shining a light on people who are doing such interesting things. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Well, listen,